Hey everyone, Brandon here, Socket Monkey Garage, and it's another opportunity for us to grab the Charger and head to Costco, but I think I'm actually going to swap it out for the EV9. Our grocery list and the items that we need is rather large, and while this has excellent cargo capacity, when you include my wife's wheelchair back there, it can eat up quite a bit of space, and so I think the EV9 is going to be our better option. But the reason why I'm jumping in here is to ask you to come along with me on this drive as we're making our way over to Costco. I want to discuss a few things, some recent news, some recent headlines, some of the information coming out about the first quarter sales numbers for the Dodge Charger. So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. Let's get to it. Okay, swapped out the Charger for the EV9, taking our largest cargo capacity vehicle on this shopping adventure. And the drive from here out to Costco gives me just enough time to talk to you about the latest in the Dodge Charger Daytona drama, I guess, or the story of this car. And with everything going on, now granted, I make an effort not to bring politics into the conversation anytime I'm discussing cars, but there are some times when policy impacts this space. And I'm sure we've all seen recently the headlines where recent increases in tariffs from the US administration is putting pressure on several markets. But I'm here to talk about the automotive market, specifically regarding cars that I'm interested in. So I'll start first with talking about the Charger Daytona EV. So I'm sure everyone saw, regardless of whatever your preferred news source is, the headline regarding the impact of the flat 25% tariff on all auto imports. So I'm sure you're aware, and if not, that's okay. The Dodge Charger Daytona, much like its predecessors, is built in Canada. It's actually manufactured just there across the way from Detroit in Canada at the Windsor plant that is there in Ontario. So immediately, based on the composition of the parts inside the vehicle, that being, even if it's assembled in Canada, it still has parts from around the world within it. And because of that, obviously, those cars, when these tariffs go into effect, which should be by the time this video is uploaded, would obviously have a negative impact on the price of the car if Stellantis chooses just to pass on that increase of 25% to the consumer, or if they decide to absorb all or a portion of it, would clearly eat away at the profit margins, however thin they may be on that model. And that too isn't in anyone other than the US government's favor. So as a result, and again, the headline I'm referring to is the announcement that Stellantis has ceased production for the time being in response to the tariffs on the Dodge Charger Daytona, as well as laying off employees, I guess, associated with or related to the production or part supply of those vehicles. Now, is this a move that is wholly based on a response to the tariffs, or is this just a cover story that Dodge is using to kind of soften the news around another headline that I'm sure you all saw recently? And that is the poor sales performance of this model in the first 3 months, the first quarter of 2025. So if we rewind back a little bit, I think you'll remember last year, the Dodge Charger Daytona was supposed to be launched mid-year, as when most new model years are released, which is, mid-year or near the end of summer, fall at times, as a new 2024 year model. That didn't happen. Those delays occurred, they continued to occur, and it pushed the launch of the vehicle well into the first few days or weeks of 2025. I, in fact, myself wasn't able to take delivery of my car until early February, a brand new 2024. Now, there's a mix of 2024s and 2025s currently out there on dealers' lots, and I've seen estimates around the days of inventory on this car, anywhere between 1,200 and 1,500 days worth of inventory. And there are other videos out there from other YouTubers that show Dodge lots packed to the gills with unsold Daytona EVs. Here in Chattanooga, at my local dealership, I believe they only have 4 or 5. So it visually, when going to the dealer there, it doesn't look as striking. Having 5 deep in inventory is normal, I would assume. But I have seen videos and I have seen pictures of other lots where, as far as you can see within the frame of the picture itself, nonstop rows and rows of Daytona EVs. So perhaps the 25% tariff being assessed on imported vehicles is a bit of a blessing for this car, because it does give Dodge an opportunity to sort of shift responsibility for shuttering its production and unfortunately impacting the livelihoods of our auto workers, whether they be North Americans in Canada or North Americans in the US. It doesn't really matter. And on that front too, I do just want to say another headline, unfortunately, that popped up while I was doing my research is a tragic loss of an auto worker at one of Stellantis's engine plants. I don't know if you've seen this at all, but our condolences go out to that family. I think it's an example of just how much our auto workers sacrifice and put themselves at risk to deliver what, for many of us, myself included, are considered toys. An extra car I don't need, something that's just fun to drive around, and to think that someone lost their lives in order to deliver such a thing does cause me to take a moment of pause. And so hopefully Stellantis thoroughly investigates this incident and can ensure that workers at that plant aren't at risk and won't suffer the same injuries or death that one unfortunate worker did. But the point of this conversation is to talk about the Dodge Daytona EV and what I think its future could be, and to spark a conversation with the rest of you down there in the comments. And while you're down there, if you've subscribed, I really do appreciate it. You guys have helped me reach 1,000 subscribers, and that is a great milestone to achieve. But if you haven't subscribed yet and you're enjoying this content so far, I encourage you after this video to go check out my other videos. But if you could hit that subscribe button while you're down there, I'd super appreciate that as well. So back to the topic at hand. Buried within all of these various news articles and press releases from Stellantis regarding the Dodge Charger EV, one footnote that I noticed that doesn't seem to be getting as much attention is the fact that Dodge is clearly shifting their focus towards their petrol-powered, their ICE engines. Obviously, they're rolling out the straight six-pack models later this year. There are rumors that a V8 could return to the lineup. I think this is all great news. And as a result of this shift in focus from a propulsion methodology, Dodge has decided to make the EV version, the Daytona version, a special order only model. So that's right. Starting in 2026 model year, if you want an all-electric Dodge Daytona EV, you would have to special order and wait for that allocation to be built and delivered to the dealer. Dodge will no longer send or provide dealers with allocations and just have these sitting on lots. Now, maybe the dealers will keep one there as a demonstration unit so that buyers aren't just blindly buying a car that they've never driven, or perhaps they'll put them inside a 6-pack model, 2 or 4-door of their choice, and essentially say, this is very much the same experience, your propulsion system is just going to be different. Who knows? I guess we'll see once the 2026 model year kicks off and what Dodge has up for offer as far as options for that model year. So all in all, if you really kind of take this constellation of information and sort of kind of step back and start to see the big picture, I think what we're seeing is that this is clearly a failed experiment. The global economy, the global markets, the emphasis on EV propulsion versus ICE, a change in leadership at Stellantis has all led us to a point where we can now see a future where this car is primarily ICE propelled, regardless of the number of cylinders under the hood, and that the EV is sort of just an afterthought or option for those who want something different. Will Dodge hold true to their original statement that if you want the highest performance, if you want an SRT model, you have to go electric? That's where our highest performing, highest horsepower, highest torque, all-wheel drive units will be in the lineup. That, I guess that remains to be seen. I have mixed feelings about that. I think electric propulsion offers many benefits, especially from a performance standpoint when in an all-wheel drive package. But I also agree that there are some benefits to ICE propulsion, especially high horsepower, high torque V8s. So if Dodge is pretty much using this tariff situation, using the resulting work stoppage at the Windsor plant on producing the Daytona EV, has unfortunately impacted the livelihoods and laid off workers related to that program, I think that pretty much tells you that they see the backlog of unsold units, some of the issues, which I'm going to get to, that now that we have nearly 2,000 of these sold in the first quarter and in the hands of owners, that some commonality with the issues that users are experiencing with the car is coming to light, once you have a larger sampling size. Back when it was just a few dozen of us, or maybe even a couple hundred of us on the forums, it was really kind of hard to gauge. Is this just the typical new model teething problems? Is this just an early batch? Are we sort of signing up for being beta testers, which I would say we absolutely were. I think we all knew that going into it. But now that you've gone through those early adopters, what you're seeing is with the really aggressive pricing that Dodge has put into place with this car, they're attracting your average everyday car shopper. Some of these, for the first time, this car will be their first EV. And I would have to say, I wouldn't recommend the Daytona EV as your first EV. I'm sitting in the EV9 now. I honestly would have to say that I think Kia and Hyundai and Genesis offer better alternatives for your first EV. The Chevy Bolt. The Chevy Bolt is another great example. And there are other EVs out there. If I didn't mention your favorite EV, it's not that I don't like it. It's just I'm driving and I can only come up with so many options as half my brain is occupied with not killing myself and my wife. But my point is as an EV driver, as a car lover in general, and having 3 EVs myself, I would have to say from a purely EV perspective, the Dodge Charger sort of falls short. And I've covered that in my other videos. I'll link one up here where you can see me complain about how Dodge implemented brake regeneration in the Charger EV and just how regen heavy and how that regen changes when the drive mode changes without any real indication. You'll go off throttle and you'll expect a certain G-force as a car slows itself down, and it'll be much, much stronger or much, much less, and the car will continue to roll forward. And that's where, when it comes to being a first-time EV buyer, I think you'll be better served buying a different car. It's still a good car, But now that we have a couple of thousand of us inside of these things, there are reports, and it's really hard to substantiate these because the level of documentation, the level of proof varies from story to story. But one thing I will say is one fellow owner and a fellow YouTuber, E all-wheel drive. He's been posting a lot of great videos. I believe he's also out on the Daytona Owners Forum sharing his experience. And he just recently posted a video the other day about how he's had to initiate a buyback case with Dodge on his brand new car. And I believe he's in an RT, but from a platform and a hardware perspective, that really doesn't change anything. And what he experienced is the result of a parts shortage. So in essence, the issues he's experiencing with his car, the parts that Dodge has provided to rectify the situation, to remediate the issues he's experiencing, aren't fixing the problem. And as a result, I think they've tried 2 or 3 different head units in the infotainment center, and the system won't accept, it won't allow, I don't know if it's like you gotta set the proxies or something there with it. I'm sure Jordan, our resident tech, can jump in and correct me if I'm not sharing that properly. But as a result, there are no longer any infotainment head units available in stock as a parts replacement for this car. And therefore, they have no ETA on when he's going to be able to get his car back on the road. I think also in his last video, he indicated that even though he's initiated this buyback case, Dodge and the dealer are really trying to keep it where he can keep this car, and are flying an engineer in directly to look at his particular unit, perhaps with tools and maybe updates that aren't available at the dealer level that could correct the issues he's experiencing. But that's just an example, and the reason I start off with that one is because it's an example with documented proof from a source I can trust. But on the forums itself and on the Facebook groups, all of the areas where owners are beginning to sort of congregate and share their positive and negative experiences, I have to say that the common issues that are occurring in a higher number than I would expect, even for a first model year, first platform implementation with still a large platform this car is based on, the number of issues are higher than the average in such a situation. And they fall into, I'm going to put just 3 common categories. There may be more. If I don't list your problem and you're a Dodge Daytona owner, drop down there in the comments while you're at it and let me know. Or if I'm listing an issue that you're having, if you could indicate that you're experiencing that issue or more in the comments as well. And if you're a Daytona owner or you're just curious about the Daytona and this is your first time on my channel, that subscribe button would really enjoy you giving it a click. And I would too. But back to what we're discussing. So the 3 categories that I see most of the common reoccurring complaints about the car are software. And software is a very broad category when it comes to complaining with this car. But the more common issues with the software are some that I've experienced myself, where presets, memory, favorites are just disappearing. I have an issue with mine where occasionally the windows that are frameless don't go down and back up properly. You've seen my other videos where I can't close the doors or the doors don't shut all the way as a result. Or in the app itself, the app is really flaky, really flaky, with oftentimes indicating charging errors only because you've set the 80% charge limit, and it errors out because it itself prevented it from continuing to charge. But then it panics because it thinks the charging failed. Or you'll go to open the app and it'll be reporting information that doesn't align with your model of your car or your unit itself in its current state in any way. Then there are things that I would consider to be low 12 volt battery issues. So these could be complete car down issues, like my other video where 2 days after taking delivery, I went out to open it up and I couldn't. And other people are experiencing this problem as well. Now, there are indications that there is a fix in the works. I think it's currently being tested. I also think that I've heard that this fix for these other issues introduces some bugs itself, which seems to be kind of a common theme with this car. You knock down one mole, the other mole pops up, you whack that mole down, and then another issue pops up. But my point being, there is apparently a bug in the software for the car where there are erroneous or incorrect low voltage warnings set within the ECU or one of the systems of the car. And this then creates this cascade failure where you'll get lights on the dash with a little red wrench, or you'll get something that says service vehicle electrical system or camera offline. You'll get this flurry of different error messages. It all seems to depend on the model of the car and what's going on at the time. But in essence, what it results in from a user experience is the car being down. Either it won't start, it won't let you drive it, or while you're driving it, it indicates an issue, it goes into turtle mode, and you're limited to a certain RPM, and then you have to sort of crawl your way safely to a place to stop, and then have the vehicle towed in if you can't get it to a dealer. And then this final issue that we're seeing, and granted, I would have to say, I personally have seen a number of reports, maybe totaling 4 or 5 owners. If there are more, if you're watching right now and you've experienced this problem, I do apologize if my count is a little low, but last time I was on the forums and did a check on individual usernames and then correlated that with data out on the Facebook groups, it seems to be about 4 or 5 users have reported something that I can best categorize as unintended acceleration. Now, that term may be familiar for those of you who lived during the 2000s when Toyotas and comparable Lexus models were experiencing unintended acceleration that was due to poorly anchored floor mats. They would get wedged under, lock the accelerator in place, and no matter how much brake was applied, it was not enough to stop the vehicle. Now, I haven't been able to find any information or anything to substantiate these claims. And I'm not saying these people aren't being truthful. What I'm simply saying is that it's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly what's going on. And going back to the point I was making earlier, this could be the first EV for many of these people. And I will have to say there is a learning curve in getting used to EVs, getting used to brake regen, getting used to one pedal driving, getting used to the torque and the acceleration, getting used to how brake regen and how the cars don't primarily use their physical clamping brakes for a good portion of the brake curve. As you're slowing the car down, it actually uses the motors and turns them into generators and uses that drag and uses that ability to put power back into the car to slow it down. All of that can be different and unusual for a new EV driver. So one theory I have is in some of these cases, some of them could be similar to the Toyota issue. They've got a floor mat or they're hitting the wrong pedal, they're panicking, they're causing the car to lunge or accelerate. They could be using the ADAS system, the active cruise control. A vehicle could move from in front of them and therefore the gap is now wider and the car accelerates because you've got it set to a 1 car length or a 2 car length gap. It could be something like that. But God forbid it could be the worst thing, and that there is some form of software or hardware malfunction that is actually causing the cars to accelerate on their own. And if that's the case, I can't lie and say that, in the back of my mind, that isn't something as I'm driving mine that I think about. But it seems to be in each and every one of these cases, no accidents have occurred and the brakes were enough to stop the acceleration. But apparently the moment the brakes were lifted off of, the car would accelerate again. So I'm still watching, I'm still waiting to see more information. I'll cover this in another video if it becomes a larger, more widespread reported problem. But ultimately, really what we're looking at is the bulk of those who are having issues with their car. It's software bugs and software glitches, and it's all related to potentially a 12 volt low voltage issue with the auxiliary battery. And this is just creating and compounding all sorts of error messages and issues. And then add to that the whole dynamic with these tariffs, the price increases on parts, the impact to supply chain, that laying off thousands of auto workers or related workers in the automotive supply chain could cause. I think we're going to enter into a phase with these vehicles where its future is really at risk. Now, I know already, as I described earlier, Dodge is ceasing production of the EV. They are focusing primarily on the ICE-propelled versions, relegating the EV to a order-only special order unit. But if they continue to suffer and we continue to see additional buybacks, the one I referenced earlier from all-wheel drive, this isn't the first I've heard of. And I myself, I'm sitting now 30 days waiting on parts for my car. I still need the seat ventilation fan motor. I need my haptic control stack, as well as updates to mine. I have another video that I'm currently working on where I dive deep into what I can prove to be some form of parasitic drain on the 12-volt battery, because I hooked up a BM2 Bluetooth battery monitor to the 12-volt battery in my charger, and I've been monitoring it for well over a month now. So I have quite a bit of data that I'll be happy to share. I have no clue what's causing it, so spoiler alert, I don't have an answer. But what it does point to is this reported fix that's in the works, where this error message, this errant 12-volt, low 12 voltage, 12-volt, boy, I can't even get that out, can I? Low 12-volt battery error message that then locks out a bunch of other systems and prevents the car from being driven. This fix is apparently just neutering that error message. It's not fixing the underlying inherent problem. That tells me they don't have a fix for that underlying. So it's like you have, if you work in IT and you've got a system where you've set up alerts because if it crosses a certain threshold, say on, if it crosses, say, a certain latency threshold, you get this alert. And you go to look at it and you realize what's causing the latency is this job that runs that you can't do anything about. It's some archaic old script that 5 guys before you 15 years ago wrote. And if you touch it, you take down every corporate system in your company. So you just go hands off, and your fix for that issue is to simply change the threshold on the alert to be above what it is when this issue occurs. And then nobody gets any notifications and life goes on as if nothing is wrong. And that feels like the approach that Dodge is taking with this. Now, granted, if the end result is that people get to enjoy their cars, people can drive them, they don't experience car down issues, they don't experience random flashing lights on the dash, turtle mode while they're on the highway, things like that, then I think it's a good move on their part. I would like to understand a little bit better while I still have the car. You know, I've got it for another year and 9 months. I would like to understand a little bit more about what is impacting those 12-volt levels. Did they underspec the battery? Do they have systems that are just poorly designed or poorly functioning? Maybe they aren't communicating well together. And that's kind of the point of why I bought the car and why I'm sharing these videos, so that not only can you, the viewer, benefit, the engineers at Dodge that I'm pretty sure might be watching this can glean some information from as well, so that it ends up benefiting everyone. And I'm happy to take that on, but I also don't need the car. I can let the car sit for a day, two, a month or two, a week or two, half a year. And I have other cars like this one to drive. Not everyone has that, you know, not everyone's that fortunate. And I really do feel bad for those who traded in an existing car that they probably liked or loved for this car, which they're excited about and to some extent probably love, and then needing that car to get to work and it not being able to consistently provide that method of transportation. You're talking an impact to the livelihood of people. I am also very fortunate to have an income that allows me to have a car I don't need, have a lease payment that I can afford, but can continue to afford it even if I'm not using that car. And I'm aware of that. And so I try to bear that in mind when I look at others, owners, complaining or sharing their stories And I am very empathetic and very sympathetic to their situation, because I remember times in my life where I had one car. That car was an absolute hoopty. I had to spend most of my free time on nights and weekends getting it running again and in a state where I could depend on it so I could get to work and make money the next day. And if you have a situation where you're selling cars to people and you know that you're selling a car to someone that this is going to be their only means of transportation, while on the other hand, you know that that car is fraught with issues, I think there's something morally questionable about you talking someone into buying that car, knowing that it could fail on them and leave them in a situation where they can't get to work, they can't pick up a child at school, they can't take a loved one to a doctor's appointment. You know, you've got to kind of look at the big picture and understand that we're here to talk about cars, and I've been spewing on about cars during this entire commute. But ultimately, really what we're talking about are people. And so with that, I've reached my destination. I'm going to carefully find a parking spot here, and I'm going to say goodbye. And for all of you, all of these people joining me here today, sharing in this moment with me, sharing in this topic of conversation, and contributing to the conversation down in the comments, continuing to subscribe and coming back for each video, I just want to give you my sincere thanks. It really means a lot. And I wouldn't have been able to accomplish what I have with this channel so far if it weren't for you. And what monetization of this channel means is it's going to open up and expand a ton of opportunities to bring in other cars, other perspectives, other experiences that I haven't been able to this point. So I'm really excited to share what the future holds based on this news, and look for an announcement regarding that coming soon. So this is Brandon. It's been Socket Monkey Garage. Thanks for coming along on this drive and sharing this conversation with me. I found it quite enjoyable, and if you did, before you go, if you could hit that like button and that subscribe button if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it. Until next time, goodbye.